Yes, Attorney Brown, you can go ahead. God bless you and welcome.
Thank you so much. And good evening, listeners. Welcome again to Land Matters on Called Out Gospel Radio. It's good to be with you on a second week talking about land matters because indeed, land does matter because land plays such an important role in our activities, in our affairs, in how we order our lives. When it comes to land, it's probably one of the largest financial investment we'll ever make in our lifetime. So land indeed matters. And we're inviting our listeners, if you have a question, if you have a comment, please send a message to 876 868 5109. 876 868 5109. If you have a question or a comment, anything in relation to land, whether it's about buying land, selling land, getting a title for your land, and we'll gladly assist you because we recognize that those of us who hold land, we are stewards. And the Bible tells us that it is required of a steward that a man be found faithful. So we need to be faithful in how we deal with the land that has been vested in us, that we have been put in, that we are trustees for, because we are really trustees of the land. And it's a part of our responsibility as trustees that we do the best we can to ensure that the next generation is a little better off. Remembering that our forebears, our forefathers had to struggle. They could not own land because owning land meant they could vote, and the aim was for the average Jamaican not to be able to vote because power had to be controlled in the hands of a few. So our forefathers fought hard, so land in fact matters. So you're on Call Out Gospel Radio, and we invite you to send your questions, your comments, anything in relation to land ownership. I did some seminars, I spoke about it, I think last week, some seminars I did on behalf of the Jamaica Teachers Association. I did one in Mandeville, one in Kingston, one in Montego Bay, and one in St. Mary, in Galena, St. Mary. And during those seminars, I asked for a show of hands of the persons who could indicate if they have a will, if they have written a will. And I don't think 15% of the persons present, and these were persons who are retiring teachers, and not 15% of them had wills. And a lot of times we might say we don't have any assets, so why should we have wills? But remember that even if when you're employed in the service and you're about to retire, then you have quite a bit of financial security that will be in place for you in terms of your pension, and you can always get your lump sum, etc. So money is there, even though you can't will the pension, the money is there for you. We have quite a bit of what we call in Jamaica back money. So we encourage our people to make wills. We need to get into a will culture where you make a will as soon as you reach the age of 18, even to write down, I leave all I have to my parents. You might say you don't have anything, but God forbid you're walking on the road and a car should hit you down and you should die. If you should not die, then you'll be able to sue the insurance company, the car has insurance, or the owner, and that money would be yours. If you should die, then your relatives would be able to sue the insurance company and that money would fall into your estate. So it will go to whoever you will. You will it, or if you don't have a will, then it will go to your next of kin. So we need to have this culture where we just have the will written at age 18. Even you don't have any assets, so I leave all I have to my parents, and then you update it as you go along. Okay, I think is a part of the responsibility that we have as a people to ensure that we make our wills. And remember, the will must be in writing. You can't you can't just give your child the title. I see so many persons coming to my office to say, before my father died or my mother, he or she gave me the title, so the property is mine. No, it cannot pass like that. It must be in writing, which is what I'm encouraging this evening. Okay, on Called Out Gospel Radio, we're encouraging persons, and we encourage you to join, to listen, and encourage other persons to join the YouTube link and to listen to this informative gospel station that is trying to educate us as a people, because as we know, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Jesus said to his disciples that the children of this world are sometimes wiser than the children of light. And he said that when he was talking about the unjust servant, the servant who reduced the debt that was owed to his master so that he could make friends of persons. When he lost his job, he would have friends in the right, what he thought would be the right places. And Jesus, in pointing that out, said that the people of this world are sometimes wiser than the children of light. So I want us as a people to get wise. Let us get wise as a people, because knowledge is power, and we as Christians we need to be informed. We need to have that knowledge. And many of us are leaders where we are from, so we need to be able to impart this kind of knowledge to persons who are out there. So when we see our co-workers, our relatives, our friends, our neighbors making errors, we have that knowledge where we can guide them aright. So I'm encouraging my listeners to listen to programs such as these, and to listen to stations like Called Out Gospel Radio, so we can have the knowledge needed to negotiate and to navigate the challenging times we're living in. And we see what is happening, outside of Jamaica. So a lot of Jamaicans, their situations becoming a little tenuous. So it's an opportunity now for you to look at your land holdings, look at the family land, look at the land, the generational land, the piece of land your grandmother had given you before she passed, but you went abroad and forgot about it. This might be the time to survey it and to try to get it titled. Please remember, if you have a comment or you have a question, you can always send a WhatsApp message to 876 868 5109 or to 876 387 3183. You can send a WhatsApp message to any of those numbers, 868 5109 or 387 3183. In terms of making the will, remember that you can buy a will form. You don't have to get a lawyer to make the will. Even though if you can afford it, it's best if you get the lawyer to make the will. It's always best. But if you can't afford a lawyer, buy a will form. The will forms are very, what we would call, user friendly. So you don't have to do something very complex. Maybe you have a house. I give my property at 10 York Avenue to my son John, my daughter Mary, and my granddaughter. So and so, and you can give them in fractions. You can say 1/2 for John, quarter for Mary, quarter for my granddaughter. Or you can do percentage, 50% for Mary, 40% for John, 10% for the grandchild. Or you can say it, if they must get it equally. You might say the piece that John has built his house on is his. So, so I'll be as specific as you can. And you can put anything you want in the will. Because these wills I really want to spend a little time on today. You can put anything. You can say, I want to be buried in a gold casket at the front of Meadowrest. You can put anything. I want anything you want, you can put in your will. As a matter of fact, I prefer when the will is more detailed. So we have less controversy, less speculation. Do anything you want, where you want to be buried, what you want to be done. And a lot of persons these days are already planning their funerals in terms of even paying down on their plots, etc. So do as much as you can, but let persons know what you have put in the will. And remember that when you make your will, you have to have executors. And I really want to get persons well informed about this. When you have a will, you need to have executors. And the executors are the people. And I want persons to get into that habit of using that word, executors. Okay, it might spell like executors, but it's executors. I want us to get in the habit of I want us to know that when we make wills, we have to have executors. The executors are the persons who are going to ensure that everything we say in the will is carried out. And your executors are powerful people, so you need to choose them carefully. You can have as many as 4 executors. You can have from 1 to 4. And remember, the executors are going to step in the shoes of the person who has died. So anything you can do when you're alive, the executor can do when you have died. This is Called Out Gospel Radio. I'm Gloria Brown, and you're listening to Land Matters. And this is aired Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Okay, this is our second program, and we aim to inform and to enlighten and to equip our clients, our listeners, so that they can impart the knowledge to others, so that those who come behind us will find us to be faithful. That's important. Those who come behind us must find us to be faithful of the blessings that we have got. and that include land, because land matters, and that's the name of the program on this called out gospel radio. So I'm saying to you that we need to choose the executors carefully, because the executors are powerful people. Anything that the person who has died could do, the executors will be able to do when they have got probate. And what is probate? Probate is really an order from the court. So when a person dies and the person has made a will, then an order is given from the court when the will is lodged in court with the death certificate, and the executors have signed up certain documents and the witnesses, and at least one witness, then the court will give an order. They'll sign a document called a probate, giving the executors permission to act. That means the executors will therefore be able to start sharing up what the deceased person, what the person who has died leaving. So the executors, when you get that document signed and sealed by the court called probate, it's time to act. So when you get that document, you're going to go to the bank and you're going to get the monies that the person died leaving. Sometimes some of the banks will ask you to set up an estate account before they will allow you to touch any of the funds, and all the funds that the person died leaving will go into this account. Some banks will give you a check in your name as executors when you show them the probate, but the probate will open the door. It opens the door for the sharing of the assets. You're going to go to the insurance company, and the policy that the person had that had estate as the beneficiary did not name any beneficiary, you're going to get that check in executors' names. The NHT contribution refund, the back pay from the job, all of those funds will go into the executor's names. Executor has power. Choose them carefully. And as I said, you can have as many as 4 executors. The executors are also empowered to sell your assets. So even though you might write a will and say the house is not to be sold, but must pass from generation to generation, you will need to note that it's against the law for us to say that property is not to be sold. It's against the law to say property is not to be sold. You cannot tie up the executors. Okay, you can't fetter the executors by stating that they don't have the right to sell. They have the right to dispose of your assets, just as though you had the right when you were alive to dispose of them. Executors have the right to dispose of them in death. So you can't fetter the executor's feet by saying the property is not to be sold. And even if you will it, suppose you will the property to your spouse, your children, the executor still has the right to sell. Suppose the executor say, I don't have any money to pay the lawyers to do the probate, and I don't have any money to pay myself my 6%. Then executor has the right to sell, and having sold must share the rest of the proceeds after taking out the expenses. Then the executor will share the proceeds among the beneficiaries after paying lawyer, paying executor's fee, paying transfer tax, paying death duties, transfer tax on death. All the expenses are taken out, and then executor should share the assets. And there have been instances where executors have disappeared with the assets. So again, it's important to choose them carefully. And remember, we say you can have as many as 4. And executors are to get, as I said, 6% of the estate. So you have a property valued $10 million, the executors are to share $600,000 among themselves. If it's one executor, the executor will get that 600,000 for himself or herself. So therefore, the executor has a responsibility to value the assets before sharing time, because that's how the lawyer is going to usually ask for that valuation, because that's how the lawyer is going to be able to calculate his or her fees, and that's how the executor should be able to calculate the executor's fees. We are listening to Called Out Gospel Radio, and I'm Gloria Brown, and this is Land Matters. Anything land related, we're talking about buying land, selling land, and an important aspect of estate planning is the issue of making wills. So that's what we want to be concentrating on a bit this afternoon. And remember, you can send us a text message to 876-387-3183, 876-387-3183, or 868-5109. Okay. I see someone has sent a text message. So this is my first text message. Okay. So if we were given a prize, you'd have got one. My first text message from Andrew. Good night, Miss Brown. What happens if someone has lost someone's will after that person has passed? Andrew, that is trouble. That is trouble, which is why I always say to my two persons, always have a copy of the will, even a photocopy, and give it to somebody. So when I make wills in my office, I always make at least 4. I give the client 3 and I keep 1. Because if you have lost that will, it's going to be very, very difficult because there's no way to reconstruct it. If the person has made a will and willed everything to like their spouse and children, then it's not so bad because they could just go and apply to administer the estate, treating it as if there's no will. But what happens when there's wife and children and the person had made a will willing it to one other person? Because the person who has lost it, would be in serious trouble. Because suppose, for example, my husband has made a will and he has willed his assets to his sister and we can't find the will. If we go to administer, his assets going to go to his wife and children. There's nothing for sister to get. So sister could go ahead and sue the person who has lost it and could prove the witnesses could prove or the person who wrote the will could prove say yes, was a will to sister. So you could go to court, but it's difficult to prove to the court that there was such a will. So suppose, for example, the gentleman had just willed the property to his wife and children and the will is lost, that's fine. Because when you administer the estate, the wife and children would benefit as well. So I would need to get a little more. But if there's a photocopy of the will, all is not lost. You can apply to the court to get an order to prove the copy. So the court will give you an order to say, yes, you can treat the copy as a real will and go ahead and probate it. So I would love to know, and I pray that there is a copy. But everything these days, we have the technology. Everything you have, get a photocopy. You must can find somebody you can trust. If it's a will form you had used where it's just one copy, find somebody and give them a photocopy to keep. But I really prefer if the will is typed up, okay, and then you can have additional original copies. Thank you so much for that question, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And it also says to us that we really need to put our wills away carefully. Remember, you can lodge your will, you can record your will at the Island Records Office, but it's not necessary. And sometimes when it's there, you might feel a little reluctant to go and change it. And a will is something that we need to be updating ever so often. Every time somebody in your will, if anybody in your will should die, the witness, the beneficiary, the executor, anybody in your will should pass, you need to make over the will, even the witness. Then you make a new will. Don't just leave it with persons on it who have died. Update your will regularly. And sometimes because you have to update them regularly, then it might be a little bit inconvenient to have to every time you have to go and record it again. So you don't need to record the will. You are listening to Called Out Gospel Radio. I'm Gloria Brown and you are listening to Land Matters. Please remember you may send a text message to 876 387 3183. 876 387 3183. Yes, I was saying you could record the will at the Island Records Office, but again, that is not necessary. You don't need to. You can just make somebody know where it is, put it away safely, and update it as often as possible. Also, you do not need a justice of the peace to put any seal on the will. And I'm encouraging my JPs, do not put a seal on persons' wills. When you're witnessing the will, you're not witnessing the will as a JP, because JP is not an occupation. You're witnessing the will Gloria Brown, teacher, Gloria Brown, attorney, Gloria Brown, farmer, Gloria Brown, plumber, Gloria Brown, doctor. You're not witnessing it as JP because JP is not a profession. So put your profession and do not put your seal on the wills, because sometimes the seals might interfere with writing, etc., and you have to explain to the judge. And JP is another thing. Do not, after persons have made their wills, do not go and certify the wills. You don't have the authority to certify persons' wills. So after the man has made his will, I've seen JP certify wills after people have died. You have to explain to the court now why you have interfered with the person's will, and that can put you in trouble. So as best as possible, after the 2 witnesses have signed, that is enough. You don't need a third signature. You don't need a JP to complicate matters. You just sign the will in the presence of 2 or more witnesses who must be present at the same time. So you can have 3 witnesses, but you can't, all of them must be present at the same time. So you can't sign, the man can't sign his will and JP go and certify it later on. Okay, so that's something that we need to be very, very cautious about. Please remember you may send a text message to 876 387 3183 876 387 3183. You may send a text message in relation to anything that any question you have. Maybe you have had a burning question for a long time about land matters. Call in to Called Out Gospel. Text the message to us at Called Out Gospel Radio, and we'll try our best to answer that question. Remember, as I said, the will must be in writing. Word of mouth cannot pass the assets, and we're looking at wills today. Word of mouth cannot pass the asset. If a person has made a will and willed something to somebody, so suppose John Brown makes a will and wills a property to his sister, and the sister dies before John, then the asset is going to go back to John. It's going to go back into John's estate. If, however, John makes a will and wills a property to his daughter, and the daughter dies, the daughter's share will go to the daughter's children. If the daughter had children, if there's no child for the daughter, it will go back in John's estate. But otherwise, when you will something to your child and the child passes, then the child's children will benefit from the bequest that was made to the child. Another thing you need to remember is that you need to know is that marriage revokes your will. Okay. Yes, and next week we are going to open up the lines for a person to be able to make calls and to be able to call in. But for now, you can just send us the text message to 876 387 3183. Okay, and remember this is Land Matters on Called Out Gospel Radio in Ocho Rios, St. Anne, Jamaica. Okay, and the aim of Called Out Gospel Radio is to fulfill God's purpose and impact lives. Okay, and welcome our listeners who are joining us by radio stream on the app in the Google Play Store or any other app. Also, those listening on the YouTube channel. And remember, you are asked to send a text message, preferably. You can send a text message to 876 387 3183 or make a comment. Look on the YouTube channel and make a comment. These comments are, can encourage us and can also tell us some of the topics that you like for us to speak about next week. Okay, so we welcome all the members of the family, the Called Out Gospel Radio family, and we hope the family will expand. So tell persons about this radio station, a radio station that aims to impact lives and to improve lives in community, not just limited to the Ocho Rios area, but all over Jamaica and all over the world, because that's how the technology is. So we ask you to please tell somebody about not just Land Matters, but about this radio station, because there's so much there for persons to learn, so much there, because in these times when our children are being impacted by so many negative influences, this is a good time, this is a good opportunity for us to tell persons about this radio station. Let them know that there are many little different areas that they can learn, not just on Land Matters, but so many other areas. Just listen, and there's so much for you to learn. So welcome all those persons who are listening and all those who promise that you're going to tell even one other person next week about this station, so that it can fulfill its mission, because we have a mission. Okay, there's a mission. The station has a mission. Okay, to educate and to make lives better for persons. So remember, this is Called Out Gospel Radio. It's in Ocho Rios, St. Anne, Jamaica, and its aim is to fulfill God's purpose by impacting the lives of others. Okay, so that eventually we will help to make the earth to be filled with the glory of God. That's the aim of the station, as the waters cover the sea. So let us really, really try our best to tell somebody about this. And remember, you can listen, okay, via the radio stream or the app or in the Google Play Store or so many other opportunities. Okay, just listen out for Called Out Gospel Radio. So this evening, we're looking at wills. And as we said, just make a comment on the YouTube page. Tell us something you love to talk about in relation to land matters. Maybe there's a family land. Maybe there's a conflict in the family in relation to who should live where the road should be. Anything in land related matters. But remember, we just don't want you to listen to land matters. We want you to be able to tune into this station. You're going out on the road, the traffic is heavy. It's good to tune in. It helps you to reach home, a little. It make the commute a little lighter. Okay, and make the burden a little less. So remember, Called Out Gospel Radio is the place to be. Let us try to increase the listenership. So I'm talking to you this afternoon in the last few minutes I have about the importance of writing the will. And remember, you can always send me the text message to 876-387-3183. And there's a question: how do you deal with landowners who are stubborn and believe a will is not necessary? Legacy is all that matters. But indeed, what is legacy? What is legacy? Because when you leave it and it's uncertain, then you find that the legacy might not be the legacy that you thought it would be. So I'm encouraging, especially the older persons, don't say that your parents left it like that and you're going to leave it like that. Be certain. Your son has built on near to the mango tree, will that part to him so he can leave a proper legacy for his children. So it doesn't become a big piece of family land with a lot of conflict and no order, where everybody feels that it's free for all. Okay, so this is how we're going to create the generational wealth, by leaving things in order. Because the countries that are first world, you don't see the families leaving things. First of all, they have legislation in place to make things easy for those who are coming after. So you find that a lot of these first world countries, and I'm going to look at a gentleman called Hernando de Soto one of these weeks, who has written a book called The Mystery of Capital, why capitalism thrives in the West and fails everywhere else. He's just looking at what he's really trying to say is why rich countries are rich and poor countries are poor. And a part of it is the legacy. How are we leaving the legacy? Are we just leaving our family in confusion, where brothers and sisters not talking to each other because parents have not fulfilled their responsibility? So in terms of how they have devised the legacy, by just leaving it and saying, let them live there, them will live. Okay, that's not a good idea. Another thing that I want us to look at as a people, and something that I discussed, is this thing that we feel that we should disinherit our daughters because they don't name. Okay, like I hear people say, I'm going to leave it for the boys because them can carry on the name. And sometimes that's not always the best thing. Let us look at blood and not name. Okay, let us look at blood. The daughters are blood as well. So you're going to leave it just for the sons and sometimes leave nothing for the daughters and create a lot of problems. Okay, sometimes that's not for the best. And there's a story in the Bible where two daughters had gone to their father, some daughters, not wasn't two of them, to ask him to give them their share of the legacy as well. Because in those days it was only the men who should have gotten it. It's a passage I look at one week. But just to encourage you, my listeners, okay, as we wrap up and as I looked at wills this evening, remember that this is Called Out Gospel Radio. Okay, and the aim of Called Out Gospel Radio is to empower our listeners, okay, to fulfill God's purpose by impacting lives, not just in terms of your religious knowledge, but in terms of your social knowledge, in terms of knowing what it is that you have to do, your social responsibility, so that we can be better Christians. Okay, we don't want to be heavenly minded and be no earthly good. We want to be able to impact the world in a positive way, so persons can see us and admire us and know that the church is not just for those who have nothing to do, but the church is for persons who are knowledgeable, educated, okay, and don't feel that church is for those who have nothing to do. So Called Out Gospel Radio in Ocho St. Anne, Jamaica, fulfilling God's purpose, impacting lives. And we want to welcome again our listener. Thank you so much for participating in our program this evening. And we want you to join the radio stream, okay, on the app in the Google Play Store or on all the other apps on YouTube. Just let us listen and let us participate and let us be a part of the Called Out Gospel Radio family. Remember that I'm on again 7:30 next week. And thank you so much, listeners. And I say a good evening to you and to the rest of the Called Out Gospel Radio family. Have a good night.
Oh, brother, show us how to love our neighbor like a candle. Shine your love to let our children know that we care. Oh Lord, please hear our cry. We need you now, Lord.
This is Called Out Gospel Radio, and the time is a minute after 8 o'clock. Of course, that was attorney Gloria Brown with the program Land Matters every Tuesday, 7:30 Jamaica time. Tune in and be blessed.
Heavenly Father, heal our land. Heavenly Father, stretch forth your mighty hand.